Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get the webinar started shortly after 1:30. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started now. Welcome to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center's Quarterly Funding Opportunities webinar. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. All of the attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, please submit it in the chat box, and we will get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. We are recording this webinar and we'll post it on our website shortly after, so if there's anything you see, we will have it available on our website for you to access sometime within the coming week. In this webinar, we will cover two MassCEC programs that are currently accepting technology innovation proposals. As a note, MassCEC offers these webinars approximately once every quarter, and we aim to cover programs that are of timely relevance. Today, we will be discussing MassCEC's Catalyst and Amplify Mass programs. As I mentioned, we will be covering two of MassCEC's clean energy technology programs in this webinar. I'm Corey Grunwald, a program administrator in MassCEC's Innovation and Industry Support Division. In just a moment, I will be providing an overview of MassCEC and our general technology development suite of programs. Then our first presenter, Susan Ahern, will cover the Catalyst program. Susan is a director at the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center and works on the Catalyst program. And lastly, Ariel Horowitz will cover the Amplify Mass program. Ariel is a director of technology development at MassCEC and oversees both Catalyst and Amplify Mass. MassCEC's mission is to grow the state's clean energy industry while helping to meet the Commonwealth's clean energy, economic development, and climate goals. We fulfill our mission by investing in programs that increase renewable energy adoption by residents, businesses, and communities, connecting employers, job seekers, students, communities, and investors to the clean energy industry, as well as helping to spur innovation through infrastructure, funding, and technology development support. MassCEC's Innovation and Industry Support Division offers a suite of programs that fulfill its mission by supporting clean tech startups and researchers at various stages. While we are only going to focus on 2 of these programs today, I wanted to take a moment to quickly go over all the programs that we offer in the case that any of them pique your interest. As you can see, we have a variety of programs aimed at helping companies and research teams in the research, prototyping, demonstration, and commercialization stages. Details on all these programs can be found on our website, masscec.com. All of the green boxes on this slide represent grant programs, while the blue boxes represent investment programs. Starting on the left of the slide, we have the 2 programs that we are featuring today, Catalyst and Amplify Mass. Catalyst is an early-stage prototyping grant program that offers grants of up to $65,000. Amplify Mass offers up to $500,000 in cost-share funding to companies or researchers that are pursuing a prime award, either federal or non-federal, such as DOE or NSF grants. We'll go more into depth with both Catalyst and Amplify in a few minutes. Next, we have Accelerate Mass, which provides up to $150,000 in convertible notes to clean energy graduates of approved accelerator programs. Of a similar company stage, we have Innovate Mass, which provides up to $250,000 to demonstration projects of new clean energy technologies. As the company and its technology mature, MassCEC offers equity investments of approximately $500,000 and venture debt investments between $100,000 and $1 million. On the far right of this slide, we have MassCEC's Deploy Mass program, which facilitates the adoption of clean energy technologies at public project sites. Along the entire x-axis of the chart, you can see that MassCEC offers workforce development programs, which basically fund interns at all company stages. And with that, you will now hear from Susan Ahern as she discusses MTTC and the Catalyst program.
Hi everyone, thanks Corey, and welcome everyone. I'm Susan Ahern, and I'm really excited to be here and share with you this great funding opportunity. MassCEC Transfer Center, which was created under the Baker administration 13 years ago, at the beginning of this year is under new leadership with Vineet Nijawan, who was asked to be the executive director and to bring a new forward-looking vision. After conducting due diligence with stakeholders across the state, Vineet decided to focus on one thing. So our new mission is enabling and celebrating Massachusetts to lead the nation on translating basic research to the market. To accomplish this, simply put, it takes innovation, talent, and money, and an atmosphere of creating collisions and taking away friction. So as you can see under our Enable bucket, for money, we are currently managing over $2 million in commercialization gap funding in the form of awards, grants, and seed funding. And this is in collaboration with Mass Clean Energy and Mass Life Sciences currently. Also under the Enable bucket, for talent, which is people, MassVX is our new exciting statewide initiative to expedite academic spin-off ventures from and in collaboration with all 34 Massachusetts academic research institutes. Our strategy is to efficiently match selected researchers to inventors with the right entrepreneurial champions who will take the business lead for the academic spin-off venture. For innovation, that's you, the inventors. And so you can also see under our Celebrate bucket, we're hosting a number of celebrations to create these communities, highlighting the academic innovators and the business talent in the state who will help us lead Massachusetts in translating basic research to the market. Next slide, please.
Hey, Susan. Sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to speak closer to your microphone? It's hard to hear you.
Oh, sure. Is this better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So next slide to Catalyst. Could you hear that, or should I repeat it?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let's talk about the Catalyst program. As you can see, it's on the lower left-hand side of your slide, and it is the smallest award and earliest stage program we offer. Next slide. This program enables the commercialization of clean energy and water innovation technologies coming from research institutions or early stage companies in Massachusetts. We award grants of $65,000 and offer commercialization coaching from the MassCEC Transfer Center. We fund proof of concept projects such as developing prototypes, third-party testing, or designing a better user interface for your technology. The goal is to have awardees attract follow-on funding once your Catalyst project is completed. This is a no-strings-attached funding program from which winners, we do ask 2 written reports, and at the conclusion of your report project, an in-person presentation. It's a competitive process with a multi-stage review process, and I'll provide more details on that later. We plan to grant up to 7 awards, 5 awards in the CleanTech project, and up to 2 Water CleanTech Nexus projects. We run the program twice a year, fall and spring, so if this time isn't right for you, I suggest using the time to gather more information or customer feedback and apply in the spring. The application deadline for our current fall 2019 round is October 8th by 4 p.m. Next slide, please. So let's celebrate the program's successes. Here are some of our success metrics. Since the program began about 8 years ago, Catalyst has awarded over $5 million to 107 projects. Our awardees have gone on to raise more than $155 million in follow-on funding and resulted in 112 new intellectual property applications. So we're really pleased that our winners have received, on average, 48 times the amount of money that the Commonwealth has granted them. Our university winners have also done really well, and that the program has allowed 17 technologies to be licensed and 9 spin-outs formed. This program also serves, as you see, a strong pipeline for the other MassCEC programs. Next slide, please. For the application, we ask that you provide the following details, and all of the details will be included on the application template online. So what we're looking for is the overview of your technology and why it's important, and clearly explaining your clean energy impact. We're looking for the commercial potential and your proposed business model. What's really important here is also selecting your project, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. As far as the budget, we want to know how you're going to spend the money and what you're going to do with it, and provide information on your team members. Next slide, please. So the next slide is on what are we looking for. A proposal with a high likelihood of success have the following attributes. Corey, could we advance the slide? For technical merit, we're looking for technologies that are novel, promising, new, and disruptive. When describing your technology, try to describe it as best you can without providing any proprietary information. We don't ask the reviewers to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so be careful as far as presenting any confidential information. On the commercial potential, in this section, discuss the size of your market, how you plan to enter it, and how well you compete against your competitors. For the project plan impact, I suggest picking a project that provides the largest impact for moving your technology forward. With this project, we want to see that you get to an inflection point where something will happen. Hopefully, you'll find an investor or a new partner. Your project is one that your potential customers or investors have been asking for. So that at the end of the project, again, that you're able to attract either a new partner or an investor. For the team, ideally, you want to show that you have people on your team who have scientific knowledge, commercialization knowledge, fundraising skills, and business contacts. I want to mention that we often receive applications with only one team member. So if that's the case, what happens there is that you'll get scored lower on this section. And so what I suggest is ask some advisors or people who will help you, even if it's on a part-time basis. It's unusual for one of you just to be able to fulfill all the roles needed. So try to collaborate with people who complement your skill set, since this will help us show us that you have others working toward your goal. And you're welcome to include these advisors on your team list. Your technology also needs to fit our program. And so we're looking for technologies with clean energy and water impacts that are measurable through the reduction of fossil fuel use. So please use current figures when giving numbers there. We're also looking on your proposal to show us that there's a potential for follow-on funding. And by this, we mean a likelihood of market entry for university projects and a likelihood of attracting private investment for startups. Next slide, please. The next slide is about prototypes. And what do we mean by a prototype? It's a first model of something from which other forms are developed or copied. It's not a basic research project. It's that you're creating a thing and not an idea. We're looking for early stage design, development, and or validation of your innovative technology. You can test a concept to evaluate your design, its real working system or a product. You can also generate data to show how an invention works. Next slide, please. What do we mean by clean energy impact? We use the definition provided by the general laws in Massachusetts, namely, advanced and applied technologies that significantly reduce or eliminate the use of energy from non-renewable sources. This includes energy efficiency, demand response, energy conservation, and those technologies powered in whole or in part by the sun, wind, water, biomass, etc. To qualify, your technology must show a clear path to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. For example, reducing cost or improving performance of carbon-free generation, energy efficiency and process energy reduction, and grid modernization for easier integration of renewables. Next slide, please. I looked over previous applications and wanted to provide some application tips and share comments that reviewers have provided in the past. So under technical merit, when describing your technology, please use layman terms and then move on to more detail. Use charts, graphs, diagrams, anything that will help convey what your technology will look like or how it fits together. The last thing you want is your reviewer to be confused as to what you're trying to accomplish. Explain why it's important and why we should care. Explain why the technology is not just a science project. So what I mean by this is show us some commercial value. Show us that someone wants to buy it. For the energy and water impact, show how you are doing better than what's currently being done and use current pricing. And for the water challenge applicants, you must show an energy savings of your technology. To receive a good score for your commercialization potential, explain what market you will enter first and why. Show us that you've thought about the commercialization path. Hopefully, you've already talked with potential customers and investors, and you know what they're asking for. Tell us what they're asking for. Use realistic numbers for the market size. If your market is difficult to enter, how will you get by that hurdle? Do you know people in the industry who can provide connections? Will you take away risks so it's easier to adopt? Overall, show us that you've already thought about the pathway and have already started making necessary connections and discussions. A strong project plan is one that is one of the most important parts of your application, and I cannot stress this enough. Pick a project that will give you the greatest chance of follow-on funding. Show us that you know what your customers want and your investors want, and be realistic. Try to imagine what hurdles might be at play and plan for them. What will the project enable you to do next? If the answer to this is nothing, you might want to rethink your project. If you need more funds to research or test more, then this isn't the right project program for you. Ideally, you'd reach an inflection point that'll make it easier for you to raise follow-on funding, sell your product, or find a strategic partner. For a budget, a reminder is to check with your grants and contract office if you're applying from a research institution. They may want to apply overhead, which, depending on the university, can sometimes be negotiated or removed. Please do not allot a large sum of money for equipment, and try to lease or borrow large equipment pieces. We typically don't buy things like computers. Most budgets are used for postdocs, third-party testing, manufacturing a prototype, or supplies. And if you're donating your time or working for less, please mention it. As far as the team, as mentioned earlier, show us that you have people on your team who have scientific knowledge, commercialization knowledge, fundraising skills, and business contacts. Next slide, please. So I'll run through a few frequently asked questions. In order to apply, you must be either a principal investigator at a Massachusetts research institute or a Massachusetts-based company with no more than 4 employees and with less than $1 million in funding, grants, or revenue. The majority of the company must be in Massachusetts. If you have questions about having enough of your company in the state, please contact us. You may also be a student applicant if you have a principal investigator who's willing to oversee your project. We will select up to 5 Clean Tech awards and up to 2 Water Challenge awards. And again, each of those awards will be up to $65,000. Next slide. For the Water Challenge, we will be granting 2 awards that impact the intersection of water and energy. Again, it's a $65,000 award, and the duration for both of the projects is up to 12 months. Next slide. So I wanted to share a success story with you, which is Solid Energy. They design and manufacture the lightest practical rechargeable cells in the world. And their vision is about pushing the boundaries of what batteries can do and what the world can do. And they applied to the Catalyst program in 2012 and won the $65,000 award. In 2018, they went on to raise $34 million in a Series C, and to date, they've raised $50 million. We love this kind of success story, and we wish it upon you as well. Next slide. So come meet us. In addition to this webinar, which will be online, we're hosting office hours at the following locations. In Worcester, at the Clean Tech Incubator, in Somerville at Greentown Labs, in Fall River at UMass Dartmouth Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and in Cambridge at the CIC Venture Cafe. So you can meet us in person and ask other additional questions. Next slide. This is the process that will follow. The program launched on August 19th, and applications are coming in. The proposals are due on October 8th by 4 p.m. From there, we send the proposals out to external reviewers. Members of the clean tech community in Massachusetts. They're investors, consultants, academics, attorneys, and researchers in our community. When we get the scores and comments back from the judges, the committee, which is made up of members from MassCEC and MassTech Transfer Center, will select the finalists. We'll select about 10 finalists for clean tech and 5 for water. The finalists will be notified by November 8th. And then this group will be coached by the MassTech Transfer Center in November and will come in to give a presentation the week of December 9th. Again, the presentations will be reviewed by members of the clean tech community, and winners will be announced and notified in January. Sorry, it's notified, not announced. So we ask that you go to the MassCEC website for the application and template. And I can't encourage enough that feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and good luck and thank you. And now I'll pass it over to Ariel, who will discuss Amplify Mass.
Great, thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks, Corey, for the great introduction. This is Ariel Horowitz, Director of Technology Development at MassCEC. I'll run through Amplify, and then looking forward to your questions. So Amplify Mass, as you can see on this plot of sort of our overall suite of programming that we showed at the top of the webinar, covers a pretty wide range of different project types. We run this program with awards, small and large, and from very early stage ARPA-E type projects all the way through to commercialization and sort of first demonstration and sales type projects as well. Some logistics about the program. Amplify Mass is seeking to do cost share or adder grants that supplement a prime award that is coming from an outside organization, or by which we mean an organization apart from the government of Massachusetts. This could be the federal government, it can be a corporate partner, it can be a private foundation, as long as it's not other Massachusetts state taxpayer or ratepayer funds. In general, we are not the majority funder of projects under the Amplify Mass program as compared to Catalyst, where we are the sole funder in the majority of cases. Amplify Mass is a rolling program. We accept applications every day of the year. Applications must be submitted to us before contracting is completed with the prime award. This is to ensure that there's some additionality to the funding and that we're not sort of displacing other available funding to the project. For eligibility, companies must qualify as a small business under federal SBA definitions and must be based in Massachusetts. We'll go a little bit further into that Massachusetts basis definition in a moment. And the program also accepts applications from Massachusetts-based universities or nonprofits. In that case, in order to count as Massachusetts-based, the institution really has to reside here in the state. The application requirements for this program, we try to keep our application specifically into Amplify Mass fairly light because we also require the technical volume and much of the proposal information to the prime award organization. So what we ask for is basically a description of the technology, what it is you're trying to do as part of the project, what does the market potential look like, sort of what would you do after the project was complete to make sure that the technology diffuses into the market, into use. We also ask for something called a total addressable carbon analysis that I'll go into a little bit more in a bit. And then we ask for some vital information on the project itself, sort of who's doing what is it that they're doing and when, what do you anticipate to come out of the project in terms of results, and a budget. And then, as I mentioned, we also ask for the technical volume or application materials to the prime award organization. So what is a total addressable carbon analysis? Many of the startups that we work with have conducted a total addressable market analysis that goes to show sort of the logic of how their product will in the future make money. For a total addressable carbon analysis, we're asking basically the same thing, except for instead of how the product will make money, we're asking for how the product will reduce carbon emissions primarily from fossil fuels. So that the TAC is an estimate of the greenhouse gas emissions that can be reduced or avoided or remediated, assuming wide adoption of a technology or practice. A strong total addressable carbon analysis demonstrates a clear connection between the proposed technology and what the mechanism is of greenhouse gas emissions, so that we can really see how a commercial success would lead to a reduction in carbon emissions, and a realistic understanding of how the carbon that you're addressing would vary at different sort of levels of commercialization. So it's possible in many cases, for example, that a product would have an initial beachhead market that's necessary for commercialization, but has relatively low carbon impacts compared to sort of the final target market. We also look for strong research leveraged from credible public data sources. We list a couple on the application. These include, for example, the Department of Energy's Energy Information Administration, the EPA's AVERT model, and some others. And that's really just to make sure that you as the applicant understand the numbers that you're giving us. So I'm going to go a little bit over our budget template, because that's the part of the application that we get the most questions on. The budget template that we have for this program is really unique to this program among all of our sort of suite of programming. And the information that we're asking for here is really motivated by two key questions. The first one is, how is it that our funding is going to be used in the context of the overall program that you're proposing, the overall project? So who else is giving money or effort to this project? How much are they giving and for what? And then the second question is sort of the normal thing that a budget template would ask for, which is, what is it that you plan to do with our money? So we asked for a couple of different specific figures in order to meet those goals. The first section of the budget template is about the prime grant. So we ask for who the prime funding entity is. For example, this is often the United States Department of Energy. We ask for how much the prime grant will be for, and then we ask for who is getting that primary funding in the case that, for example, we're getting an applicant from one member of a team project. Then we have a second section of the budget template that asks about other project funds, and this is where we ask you to tell us how much you're asking for from MassCEC. So this section includes any cost share requirement that's placed on by the prime funding organization. So for example, an ARPA-E grant might require that applicants are bringing in at least 5% of the project budget in cost share. Then we also ask whether you're planning to bring in any additional cost share or adder on top of that that's not required. So for example, this ARPA-E program requires 5% cost share, but you're planning to bring in 10% in order to make the application stronger, then you would put the additional 5% that's not required into this box, all in dollar values rather than percent. Below that, we ask for the amount requested from MassCEC. So this could be the same as the required cost share funding, the total of the required cost share and any discretionary adder, less than the two of those. We will look askance at it if you are asking for more from us than you are planning to put into the project, but apart from that, we've seen all other sorts of permutations. And then we also ask about any additional funding sources. For example, are any of your project partners putting in-kind funding? Are you yourself putting in-kind funding? Or any of the project partners covering their own percentage of the cost share, and so forth? All of these together go into the calculation, the automatic calculation of the total project budget. So we define the total project budget as the sum of the prime grant, any required cost share, and any discretionary cost share, and that by definition must be equal to the prime grant plus what you're getting from us plus what you're getting from anybody else. We also ask for this field, the Massachusetts Leveraged Funds. That's basically asking how much of the project funding, apart from what MassCEC would be providing, is being spent in Massachusetts. And by in Massachusetts, we mean primarily by a Massachusetts-based team member. So for example, if the members of the project were a Massachusetts-based university, a Massachusetts-based startup, and a subcontractor that was located in Ohio, then the Massachusetts leverage funds are the amount of the external grant funding, the non-MassCEC funding, that is going to the Massachusetts-based university and the Massachusetts-based startup, but not the Ohio-based subcontractor. So then the last pane of our budget template in Amplify Mass is asking for just a breakdown of where the funds are being spent. We ask for this for the prime award, for our funding, and for any additional funding that's being supplied by other funders or project partners. And we ask that you break it down into these various categories of sort of staff time, services, IP filing, consumables, and so forth. We provide the notes section there on the right to get additional detail. So a little bit more of what we're looking for in a strong application. Again, when we think about the strengths of the application itself, we want to see technical merit, that the technology, the principle of the technology is basically proven, that there's a clear idea there that the applicant has good reason to believe will work, but that in terms of the market, this is a new and disruptive idea. That there's a strong potential impact to the energy sector and to Massachusetts, and that there's a clear value to MassCEC's involvement in the project, and that the project actually needs our funding in some meaningful way to go forward. We also look to see that the team members are knowledgeable and qualified to conduct the project, and that they also have a clear understanding on what they want to see happen after the conclusion of the project to continue towards sort of commercialization or market diffusion. So we consider all of these things to contribute to a high likelihood of the success of the project from our end. And then in terms of programmatic fit, we're really looking to see the clean energy impacts, that there's a clear path to reduction of carbon emissions, and that there's clear potential for market entry, so for companies to improve the competitiveness in any existing market or to be able to enter a new market with a new product. For research projects, that there's a clear path to industrial relevance, either through a spin out, through licensing, or so forth. And we like to see a strong leverage fund factor. A lot of the appeal of our involvement in this program is to be able to catalyze additional funding coming into the state of Massachusetts. A couple of tips for making a strong project proposal. Again, we want to see clear positive impacts to the state of Massachusetts, demonstrated value of and need for MassCEC's funding and involvement, a strong clean energy impact. We do ask that the higher the grant request, the more leveraged funds are being provided. Although this is a continuous rolling program, we do have a finite budget for the program, and so a higher grant request to our eyes has a higher opportunity cost in the sense that if we fund, for example, one $500K project, that's maybe $500,000 projects that we can't fund. I will note at that point, we do have the ability to do awards up to $500K under this program, but that's very rare. So it's very uncommon for us to do an award of that amount. We really have to see a truly exceptional project that's very low risk and high impact. Apart from that, we usually like to see somewhat lower asks. For a research proposal, we like to see that there's a disruptive idea being pursued by a team with appropriate expertise, and again, a clear path to market diffusion and a strategy and some thought put in there. We like to see our funds being used for incremental person hours and capacity building, infrastructure building at an institution that could sort of be used after our funding is exhausted, for example. For companies, we like to see that there's a clear business plan, that there's some understanding of a cost model, there's clear identification of who the partners are, and again, that our funds are being used for headcount or for things that are going to be useful for the business going forward and relevant to the project. So again, for companies, we do not fund overhead under either this program or Catalyst. The other thing I'll note as part of this for a strong proposal, because we are a public agency, we are subject to public records law. Similar to Catalyst, we recommend that you don't send us anything that's confidential as part of your application materials. Applicants are welcome to redact parts of their prime proposal in order to accomplish that. However, in both Amplify Mass and the Catalyst program, we do need to be able to understand what it is that you are proposing when we read the application materials. So we would encourage you to think about a way to describe sort of the principle that you're working with and what's innovative about it without sort of going over the line into something that's competitively sensitive. Unsuccessful proposals that we see really is when our funds are not critical to the project, when we would sort of be a sweetener. This happens a lot when people ask us for adders on top of any SBIR awards. We really have to see a clear point to the scope associated with that, apart from coming in and saying that the applicant just wants additional funding on top of the SBIR to do sort of the same scope of work. Unsuccessful proposals also tend to have a weak clean energy impact or a poor risk-reward ratio, so the project is very early stage and the potential carbon upside is small. When there's weak technical reviews or a high grant ask and small leverage funding. We tend to not fund under this program basic research with limited industrial relevance, projects that seem to be unclearly differentiated from kind of the body of research that already exists or is going on apart from us, and when the overhead rates represent, 50+% of the total project budget. From companies, again, a lot of concerns about seeing unclear business models, no clear understanding of the competitive landscape, or a weak justification of the budget. Just a brief overview of our review process under the Amplify Mass program. When we get proposals in, we submit them into a threshold review process just to check that they meet basic eligibility requirements. We do an internal and often an external technical review to assess the merit of the project. And just as a note for timing, from this point of submission to any award notifications is usually at least 3 months, so we do recommend that people plan accordingly. Proposals that make it through those review stages go to our internal award selection committee, which deliberates once a month and asks questions about, for example, why the project needs MassCEC funding, what is the incremental value that we offer to the project and that the project offers to us and our sort of institutional goals and priorities, and how this fits into sort of the overall program's budget. We then go through a little bit of additional institutional review and notify our applicants of the status, whether they are awarded or whether the proposal is rejected, or if we have additional questions. If awarded, contracting usually takes about a month on our end. We have had contracting processes that take much longer than that, but that's normally because it requires some additional back and forth with the grantee and the grantee's legal team. So we would recommend that if time is a factor, that you keep the contracting tight. And just note that all of our awards are contingent on actually receiving the prime award. So those that apply in while still under consideration from the prime award agency are then sort of subject to rescission if we award the project, but the prime award does not. Our contract is usually based on the prime award term dates and deliverables. We add a couple of MassCEC specific reporting requirements and deliverables, but those are usually a relatively light lift, just usually some memos, some metrics, and an in-person presentation at the end. So a couple of frequently asked questions on this program. What defines a Massachusetts-based company? We have this on our website, but in order to count as Massachusetts-based, you must have a majority of your major corporate functions located in Massachusetts as listed here on the screen: the manufacturing, the headquarters, sales and marketing, and R&D. The award amounts in this program can range between $5,000 and $500,000. Very rare for us to do an award below, say, $25,000, just because we don't get asked for that often, but we would consider it. The review process itself, as we mentioned, can range from 3 to 6 months. Usually you'll hear from us at least with questions by month 3. Who's eligible? Small businesses who are based in Massachusetts or Massachusetts-based nonprofit research institutions and universities. Students cannot apply on their own. You do need a PI attached. Ideally, we like people to apply into the program concurrently or soon after applying to the prime award organization so that we can run our review processes roughly in parallel. But we do accept applications anytime before contracting with the prime award agency is complete. And again, just to circle back to our definition of clean energy, that's statutory. You can find it in the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 23J. We're happy to answer any questions about that through our program inbox. One success story on this program, through this program, MassCEC has been a member of CARD, the Center for Advanced Research in Drying, for 3 years. CARD is a National Science Foundation funded industry university cooperative research center, and it works on projects that can reduce the energy consumption associated with drying, which is a very substantial consumer of energy in industrial process in the U.S. Through this program, we've leveraged a lot of funding and been able to help encourage the involvement of some important industrial partners with WPI to help diffuse some of this intellectual property and these innovations out into industrial relevance very rapidly. With that, I'll hand it back to Corey and we'll get into the Q&A.
Thank you. Just to highlight some other funding opportunities of note that might apply to some of the people listening today, there is currently an ongoing solicitation for national offshore wind focused projects funded by the Department of Energy and NYSERDA. There's also the National Science Foundation SBIR program, and we will also be releasing the Innovate Mass RFP sometime in mid-December. September. Again, we will be publishing this webinar and the slides on our website, so if you can't capture the links here, you can capture them later if needed. And now we will proceed to questions.
So please do feel free to submit your questions into the question box. And I think we've gotten a couple of questions in that Corey will pose on your behalf.
Yes. Can any of the proposals be for projects that have already started?
So As I mentioned for Amplify, we only can consider applications that were submitted to us before contracting was completed with the prime award organization. For Catalyst, it depends on sort of how you're defining has actually started. We understand that a Catalyst, really, or an Amplify project are likely to be only small portions of sort of an ongoing years-long effort to commercialize a new innovation. However, the scope that is proposed to us, we cannot fund prior to having a legally valid contract to do so. So they just take that into account in terms of defining the scope of the project.
Great. Must entities be based in Massachusetts before applying?
No, not strictly, but we can only award companies that are based in Massachusetts or entities that are based in Massachusetts. So we're happy to review applications from entities that are sort of based outside of the state but are in the process of moving into the Commonwealth, but we cannot actually arrive at an award decision to award a company that is based outside of Massachusetts.
Could you drill down on what you mean by a clean energy company?
Yeah, so what we're looking for in terms of clean energy companies, and this really pertains to both programs, is entities that are going to be able to push an innovation to scale. We have gotten applications in, for example, from community groups or nonprofits that are looking to run a demonstration project or make an improvement to their own facility, something along those lines. In general, these programs are not well suited to that type of project because they're looking for innovations that are pre-commercial or sort of pre-entry into a market, whether or not that's a commercial market in some sense, but have a clear path to scale and that there's an entity responsible for pursuing that scale up of the innovation. Just saying, for example, we want to make these improvements to our facility and we'll tell people about them is not something that we would consider to be a path to scalability.
Great, thank you. Is a commercial or industrial partner required as a part of a catalyst proposal?
Susan, do you want to take that one?
Is it commercial? I'm sorry, what was it? Was it commercial or?
Is a commercial or industrial partner required as a part of a catalyst proposal?
No, it's not required at all. But if you do have one, it certainly will make your application stronger because you're going to the same goal.
And we do like to see letters of support from potential customers, for example, in really all of our programs.
Great. Are foreign small companies that open an office in Massachusetts eligible to apply for MassCEC programs?
So we have had this situation in the past. If the entity in Massachusetts is an independent company with independent ownership or licensing of intellectual property, then whether or not there's a relationship with a foreign entity, we consider that to be valid. If the company is based outside of Massachusetts, whether it's outside of the United States or not, and has a satellite office in Massachusetts, that is not considered to be based here.
Great. Do grant awards have to be spent within the state of Massachusetts?
No, not for either program. We do have a lot of companies, for example, that are buying things from subcontractors, commissioning modeling work, commissioning machining work, just ordering things from McMaster-Carr or Amazon for that matter. We understand that that in order to get the project done, you as a company or as a researcher may have to purchase goods or services from people outside of Massachusetts. So we don't have the requirement that all of the actual dispersal from your end has to go in the state. It's just that our checks must be cut to somebody who is within the state.
Great, thank you. Again, on the definition of clean energy, does a project that reduces greenhouse gas impacts count as clean energy related? Specifically, to give an example, we have one question regarding offsetting palm oil consumption.
Yeah, so this is a great question. There are lots of different routes of greenhouse gas emissions, and our angle on this is actually defined for us in the statute that I mentioned a moment ago, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 23J. What it boils down to is that the greenhouse gas emissions that are within our purview to consider are those which arise from fossil fuel consumption. So, for example, methane from anaerobic digestion or anaerobic decomposition of forest waste, while a legitimate greenhouse gas and certainly leads to warming effects, is not contemplated in the law that created MassCEC. So because of that, we cannot consider it in our funding decisions as the exclusive basis for an award. And that really governs sort of all of our clean energy analysis. Again, we're happy to take additional questions on this, on specific situations by email, but basically a lot of this was decided for us by the state legislature.
Great. Is it possible for someone at MassCEC to review an application prior to the due date?
We can tell you things like if you have filled out the budget template correctly or not, but we cannot give you a temperature on how likely you are to, for Amplify Mass, on how likely you are to be successful. For Catalyst, again, we're happy to take questions on different parts of the application, but we cannot review any of the application materials prior to getting all of them submitted on the appointed due date. And that's really just to make sure that we're being fair across everybody that would submit in.
Great. Is it possible to submit an application for the same project under multiple MassCEC programs, aka Catalyst and Amplify?
Yes, that's definitely possible. We see it often. We generally will only award a company one grant at any given time before we see, for example, performance on the first grant chronologically. So you're welcome to submit into multiple programs simultaneously. Either you or we will ultimately make the decision as to which one, if any, of the grants that you applied for you will receive. We do frequently have companies that will complete or get sort of most of the way through a grant under one program and then apply into a subsequent program.
Great. What level of confidential information should I share with MassCEC?
All of the information that is provided to us is subject to public records requests. So we would recommend that you do not send any confidential information to us. Again, we do need to be able to audit the applications that we get. We need to be able to conduct an actual technical review. So consider that when you're determining what you would count to be confidential. But within those bounds, we would say don't send us anything, especially during a review stage, that you wouldn't want to be FOIA-able.
Is it possible for two different groups to submit an application together? And if so, do all partners need to be based in Massachusetts?
Yes, we often get applications from teams. In general, we require that there has to be one lead applicant. That's the entity that we would sign a contract with if awarded. and not all team members have to be based in Massachusetts, but the lead applicant does.
What is the interest in open sourcing information after prototype development, and is it only for commercial development?
So again, this goes back to the question on scaling. We are not opposed to companies that or entities that have a plan to diffuse into the market their research or their innovation by open sourcing it rather than selling it. But we have to see a clear path to that actually getting picked up by other entities. So, you know, because this is a grant, as opposed to our investments team, for example, we don't have a financial interest in our grantees making money off the things that they're doing under the auspices of these programs. Really, that motivation is around making sure that there's that path to scale and to wide adoption.
Great. All right. I think that. Sorry, Susan, did you have something?
Nope, I'm all set.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending today. I think that's about all we have time for in answering questions, but a reminder that you can submit your questions to the Company Catalyst email address at massvc.com, and we look forward to any proposals. Thank you.